show. What?
It seems bizarre to have to ask the question, does America have a race problem?
Well, yes, I would say there is a race problem, although you think it's a different problem than what I think. The race problem I see is benevolent racism towards whites. For example, this video. And this isn't just happening in the United States, this is happening in a lot of Western countries.
But not everyone in the US agrees. Surveys consistently show that while most black people believe race is an issue, most white people don't. A divergence of opinion that existed even at the height of the civil rights movement in the 1960s.
Just because they were right then doesn't mean they are right now, which of course they're not, at least when it comes to benevolent racism towards blacks or other minorities. The main problem minorities face is benevolent racism. Most of the benevolent racism I have seen towards any people of color are people of color who are right-wing. That's because other people of color and also white leftists believe they're not towing the line. Now, the main benevolent racism I have seen is towards just whites in general, but especially towards white people who are right-wing.
It could be a bumpy ride, according to Talk Radio.
The value in black life, given the illegitimacy rate, out-of-wedlock rate, is far higher than that of the rest of the society. The reason that people have children before they marry is values, not poverty.
Okay, that's not racist. That's talking about culture. If you think culture is a part of your race, then, well, you're racist.
Blacks are stupid. That is correct. They are blinded by anger at whites.
Wait. Is that Prager? Are you seriously trying to take Mr. Prager out of context and say that he's racist? Because I'm absolutely certain he isn't. You might be able to get away with trying to say that he may be homophobic, but racist, I highly doubt.
You don't need to say white lives matter, because white people don't walk up to white people, put a gun to their head and blow them away.
Technically, that's true. There are far more matters with blacks than there are with whites. And unless he says that it's because they're black that they're killing each other or insinuates that in some way, you can't say he's racist. Plus, all of these clips that you've played is poisoning the well. It's very unjournalistic of you to do that. And how you're presenting this, I think, is slander. And you should definitely be sued for that.
I didn't want to talk to any African Americans for this film. Discrimination is obviously a black issue, but when you think about it, it's mainly a white problem.
No, it's not. There's a lot of racism coming from blacks and white liberals towards whites, not from whites towards blacks. The only racism blacks get from whites predominantly is benevolent racism from left-wing liberals.
If you think racism doesn't exist, you're white.
No one's saying racism doesn't exist. We're just saying that racism isn't a huge problem towards blacks or other minorities.
Professor Mark Levine from the University of Wisconsin gave me a tour and explained how over several decades, mortgage lenders and estate agents steered different races to different parts of the city.
That was decades ago, and I'm pretty sure you probably had the same problem in Britain.
You know, they could sort of deny outright racism by simply saying, well, this is just a hard-boiled economic analysis. We know that African Americans are a greater credit risk and they're not going to, pay back these loans, and so we're not going to make those loans. A study was done about a decade ago by the city to look at exactly that issue, and they found that a white household with income around $25,000 a year had about the same rejection rate for housing loans as a black family with income over $125,000 a year.
Yeah, that's already been debunked. The no reasons given for between blacks and whites and Asians and Hispanics are relatively similar, with actually Asians having no reason given lower than all the other groups. And the differences between blacks and whites is not that high of a percentage. The biggest reason why blacks were turned down for loans is mostly to credit history. Another reason why minorities are turned down is because of debt-to-income ratio.
And the result of racism in mortgage lending is segregation. And that in turn fuels poverty, poor schools, and so on, as investors turn their backs on black areas neighborhoods are left to rot.
Except there is no racism in mortgage lending today. It is actually illegal to discriminate on the basis of skin color.
These Americans enjoy a privilege. They can avoid the unpalatable. They live comfortable lives in nice areas because they're white.
Oh, no. That is absolute bull. There are rich blacks, rich Asians, rich Hispanics, and rich whites. Doesn't matter what skin color or race you are, everyone can be rich. And in fact, Asians have a higher income than whites do.
And the advantages white people enjoy, the privileges they have, are endless.
If by endless you mean non-existent, then yeah.
Academics and educators now believe it's the lack of awareness within the white community of these inbuilt advantages that taints white attitudes to race.
You mean the racist academics and educators.
So white privilege is growing up in a society not understanding that not everyone has benefits that are unearned.
There is no such thing as white privilege, so cut the crap. We don't have any benefits that are unearned based on race. The only unearned benefits that any group has is how wealthy they are. The rich are the ones who have the unearned benefits.
As a result of being in white skin. It may mean that because my name is Martha Berry, people are going to see that as a white name and say, let's get her an interview.
It's not because their names are a black name, it's because their names are unfamiliar. These names are foreign to them. In fact, there's actually a newer study today that it says it isn't really any different between the different names. And for one, there could be other problems with the original study in which that it could be based on the perceived economic status or the perceived education status and have nothing to do with race. And if you really are worried about not getting hired because of your name, then change your name. It's not a privilege. You can legally change your name.
This is one of the most important men in right-wing talk radio in Wisconsin. Charlie Sykes has a legion of listeners, and most are white, suburban, and Republican. Do you think many of your listeners understand the concept of white privilege? Have they come across that idea?
I think they've heard the term. I don't think they fully grasp it. I'm not sure that I fully grasp it. I actually had a caller the other day who asked me about that, and I asked him to try to define it.
And the caller did a pretty good job.
Well, I've noticed that I have a few African-American friends. One of my good friends, he's been pulled over at least 15 times, and I have never been pulled over before.
You don't just go and look at a car and say, oh, that's a black guy. You can't see someone's race. Also, places with higher crime are more likely to police, so they might get pulled over more. Oh, geez.
The election of Barack Obama distorted the debate on discrimination. For many white people, he marked the end of America's conversation on race. For black people, his success actually marked the beginning. And these are some of those for whom the so-called race card has been played out. White, working-class males flocking to Donald Trump.
Trump was not voted because of racism. Trump was voted because they didn't like what the Democrats were doing. In fact, they didn't like what a lot of Republicans were doing. Trump was something different.
We won with poorly educated. I love the poorly educated.
Any discussion of white privilege must account for the problems of the poor and working class. But few would argue it's easier to be poor and white in America than poor and black.
There's no difference.
White privilege, I just don't see it. You know what you need?
White privilege glasses.
Utter.
My journey into the mind of white America has been an eye-opener. I can now better understand how some people can blithely be unaware of the racism around them, be able to push it to one side, push the chaos to the backs of their minds. But is that an excuse for society not doing anything? No.
He's right about one thing. There are people who are not recognizing racism, but it's not the people who he thinks it is. Well, that's enough of this bull. If you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe, share it, comment down below and tell me what you thought. Follow me on all my social media, and I'll see y'all later.
Thank you.